Welcome back, everyone. This is going to be an update video on the Triumph. Everybody was really receptive to that first video I did, so I wanted to cover a couple of other topics that I didn't really get a chance to really talk about in that first video, or I forgot. So three things I want to talk about today are the quick shifter, because I've been getting a lot of comments about that, my miles per gallon I've been getting with a bike, and third, just some other general notes on ownership after, about 6 weeks. I found a few other things that I like and a few other things I dislike, so I think I'll go over that. The first thing is the quick shifter. A lot of people pointed out I wasn't using the quick shifter in that first video, and I wasn't. I really wasn't used to it yet at that point, and I kind of kept forgetting that I didn't have to clutch in. I mean, that was like 2 weeks into ownership. Now that I've had it for a little longer, I definitely use the quick shifter more, but I still don't find it to be something that I use during, stop and go traffic, or even really filtering through, my normal day commute. At low speed, it's particularly abrupt. Like right now, if it's not really enough room, but as we kind of get down this road and some of the traffic clears up, I'll kind of click through some of the gears and I'll show you what I mean. Coming off the light though, from first to second gear, if you're driving on the street like normally, I don't know why you would ever use it. It's so abrupt. Second to third gets better, and then from third gear on at low RPM, it's actually pretty smooth. But I mean, the biggest thing you're doing a lot when you're commuting is going to be first, second, and third, especially with how tall these gears are. So it's okay, and it looks like we're coming up to a stop here pretty much, so I'll go down to first, and I'll give you a little bit of a demo and show you what I'm talking about. And the bike's decently warmed up right now, so this should be a good representation. Obviously, when it's cold, it's going to be a little bit more clunky. So here's first to second, light throttle. That's okay. I mean, that's actually pretty good. I've noticed it definitely depends, I've noticed how smooth the quick shifter is. Definitely depends on how much throttle you're giving it. I'd say if you're just barely giving it any throttle, it's actually not that great. But by the time you get to 10 to 20% throttle, it's pretty smooth. So here we go, third to fourth. Again, that's smooth. And it's great. Like, I found myself leaning on it now and enjoying it, but it's still not like an essential item to a bike. Now, what would be cool, and I think that Triumph should do later on when they update this bike again, is add it as a downshift option, the quick shifter auto blipper down. That's really rad, and I think that's a legitimate improvement. You can do the same thing shifting up if you just twist your wrist a little bit and you pay attention to the bike, but having an auto blipper on the downshift, that's something pretty cool. And I know the MotoGP bikes have it, and I know some of the really nice leader bikes have it, but to see it on a middleweight bike like this would be pretty cool. Get another chance to demo the quick shifter up here as they take off from this red light and show you what I mean. The faster you go, the better it gets. And you can see right there, third to fourth and fourth to fifth, that was actually pretty darn smooth. But first to second, there's that big gap between the gears. So if you're just cruising around on the street, I just use the clutch. So that's all I'll say about the quick shifter. Well, my last note about the quick shifter is it's absolutely awesome when you are just railing this bike. I mean, there's no denying that. I mean, when you're wailing on it and you're just banging through the gears, quick shifter is great. So yeah, that's it on the quick shifter. If you have any other comments about it, let me know. Second thing we wanted to talk about here, miles per gallon. That's kind of an interesting subject. I never really worry about what kind of miles per gallon a particular vehicle gets, especially if I want it or need it for whatever reason. So it doesn't really influence my purchasing decisions all that much. I mean, I own a truck that I use to get around, and the truck gets 14 miles to the gallon, and at the end of the day, I need the truck, so I use it, or I got it, and that's kind of is what it is. You can see right now on the screen, I have been averaging 35 to 36 miles per gallon overall, and that makes sense. I do a lot of city riding, and you can see right now I'm basically in stop and go traffic going light to light. So that's how my commute is. Certainly if you're on the highway more, you're going to see 45 plus, depending how fast you ride. On longer rides, I've seen, you know, 45, 50, no problem. And it's fantastic, really. But yeah, I mean, overall, I was actually kind of surprised that the miles per gallon weren't much better than my Yamaha. The Yamaha was, you know, bigger engine, and that was a fairly thirsty bike. So, I mean, kind of is what it is. Like I said, at the end of the day, I love the bike, and it doesn't matter. The only other thing I've noticed is the fuel gauge does not seem to be too accurate. I don't know if it needs to go back to the dealer to get calibrated or what. But, I mean, if I fill the bike up at the gas station standing upright, and I'm upright with the bike, the gas gauge stays at full for like 2 miles and then drops to not 3/4 of a tank, but to where it is right now, like 7/8. So I find that kind of odd, and I'm only getting about, I'd say, 120 miles to a tank, according to the range, which makes sense, and the light comes on at 1/4. It seems like it goes awful fast, and last time I checked, these tanks were 4.7 gallons. But if I'm wrong, let me know in the comment below. You know, let me know what your experiences are with these bikes, but I thought the tanks were bigger. The FC09, that tank was hilariously small, which, you know, is what it is. But again, on this bike, I thought it was more. So yeah, that's kind of it on the miles per gallon. And, you know, I guess the last thing we'll talk about is just a few of the other features of the bike that I've discovered I like or I don't like. And the first one I'm looking in them right now is the mirrors. The mirrors look great. They work great for the most part, unless you're at like 8,000 RPM and they buzz and vibrate and you can't see anything, which is kind of a bummer. I wish they didn't vibrate as much, so I'm going to start looking into like bar end weights, I should say, and that sort of thing to dampen the vibration, but they may just get replaced with little, you know, 3.5-inch spot mirrors. I really like that style of mirror. It works really good. There's good visibility. I had them on my Yamaha, but, you know, it is what it is. So if those could be better, that'd be nice, especially on the highway. It doesn't matter so much when you're cruising around, you know, cruising around town, but on the highway, I really would like to see what's behind me. Just, it's nice to know what kind of car is there. So there's that. The other thing I've discovered on this bike that I really like and I didn't expect, and I talked about this in the last video, is the rider modes. I've finally programmed my own rider mode for street use, and it's great. I'm able to set the traction control and the ABS exactly how I want, and I've actually settled with the street throttle response. I've tried riding around with a sport mode, or it's the curvy road one, and it's fun, but it's just a little too herky-jerky for just stop and go traffic like this. The standard road throttle response is just right. It's just super easy to use, and I've been really stoked with that. It really was a feature that I thought was just kind of stupid, and now I get it. So now the bike is how I want it to be, not, you know, how the manufacturer thinks it should be or anything like that. So that's really nice. I just leave it in my rider mode all the time now. I don't even mess with it. The only thing I'll note with the lesser throttle response, or the road throttle response, is it feels a little lazy sometimes down to the lower RPM, because it limits how quickly the throttle can open, which also is a torque limiter in a sense. So people talk about, well, is the road power map any different than the street, or I'm sorry, the sport or the race? And not on its surface, not at peak numbers, but it actually does affect mid-range, so there's that. A little bit of juice, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. This bike is just a rocket ship. So the last thing that I kind of want to cover is these brakes. I've seen a lot of people talk about, wow, the brakes make a lot of noise, they squeak, they dust, and all this stuff. And I kind of find that perplexing, because you've bought a track-ready bike, essentially, with the Triumph Street Triple RS at least, and part of being track-ready implies, at least where I come from, the brake pads are capable of doing lapping all day without fading. And to get a brake pad that does that, you give something up. There's no free lunch with brakes. So in this case, they're going to squeak and they're going to dust. Mine have squeaked a lot. I attribute that partly to not having a proper bedding. With track pads, it's really difficult to bed them on the street. You just can't get enough temperature in them to actually bed them. I mean, you can try, but it's never really going to be the same as the continued heat from pounding on the bike at a racetrack. So some of that squeaking might go away after a track day, but I don't expect it, and it really doesn't matter. I mean, the fact that these pads can do a track day and basically work on the first stop in the morning on a cold morning and commuting, it's pretty incredible. So if a little bit of noise is what I got to give, or what I have to take to get that performance, it's fine with me. You know, I run race pads in a car that it's basically a track car, but I drive it on the street from time to time, and you know, to get the performance, you got to get all the dust on the wheels and all of that. So you just got to clean your machine regularly and don't let it eat into the paint on the wheels. It's not that big of a deal. So yeah, I guess with that, we'll kind of close it out. Bike's been awesome. First service didn't cost too much, like I said before. And if you're thinking about getting one, test ride one. But don't test ride one unless you can buy one, because this bike's pretty epic. The more I ride it and the more I get used to it, the more I fall in love with it, really. I mean, it was a lot different at first, and I didn't, you know, like I said, I didn't realize that on a 20-minute test drive, but boy, I've just grown to love this thing. I mean, there's nothing you can't do on it. It's incredibly comfortable commuting, and then you can just rip it. And do silly shit like that. So hey, that's all I got today. That's Sean with a driver's perspective.